I became aware of the existence of a fundamental problem, a philosophical problem, over the last 30 years or so. And I want to familiarize you with it a bit, because you need to know this. It's really important. It's complicated, but it's really important, because if we don't get this right, we're really in trouble. And we might, your country in particular, you guys have such a remarkable capacity to do the right thing eventually that, well, it's something, man. It's a lot better than not doing it at all. And I think if people understand this, the more people understand this clearly, the more likely it is that nothing too terrible is going to happen, because things fall apart that shouldn't fall apart. What I have been studying for 40 years, really, I've always been obsessed in some sense with the motivation to commit atrocity in the service of belief. And I wanted to understand that motivation primarily because I thought if I understood it, I might be able to understand the counter to it. You know, because I always believed that if you understood something, a problem, you could work towards a solution. 90% of the solution to a problem is clear formulation of the problem. And so I became convinced that one of the pressing issues of the modern age, if not the most pressing issue, was the proclivity of states to degenerate into these hellish regimes that motivated people to do the worst things imaginable. And I regarded the fact that that happened as an unassailable fact, right? A bedrock fact. And it's an interesting kind of fact, because what it meant for me, I would say, is that I became convinced of the reality of evil. And that's an interesting thing to become. And you might ask yourself if you're convinced of that. And you might ask yourself in two ways. Are you convinced or are you not convinced? Because both of those have consequences. If you are convinced, well, we'll talk about the consequence of that in a minute. But if you're not convinced, it means that, well, what's your stance in relationship to Mao or Stalin or Auschwitz? Is that okay? Is it just another way of organizing a state? Right? Is there no fundamental moral reality that such people and such systems violate? Is that all just a social construction, an arbitrary social construction? Is history only written by the victors, et cetera, et cetera? That's one concept. So you don't take that seriously. Don't take the idea of evil as a fundamental reality seriously. That's where you have to go intellectually, ethically. If you do take it seriously, well, that presents another conundrum, which is, what do you do about it? Maybe nothing. I think nothing's the wrong answer, though.